Is Nishita there? Kajal and Nishita.
Yes,
Now, will you
yes, I'm here.
already, right? And so obviously there is no attendance system, and I'm not going to take any attendance. But we'll keep this lecture as a recording in case we're not able to complete some requisite record. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
You all have an idea how many will be joining us?
Yeah, like all of them said yes.
Okay.
But I think Hasti won't be able to join us because there it's 1:30 a.m. for us. So I'm recording the video and I'll be
Yeah.
uploading it to the drive.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Yes.
But all of you have no issues connecting to the internet and whatever.
No, like the ones who said yes, they don't have, and majority said yes. So
Okay.
yeah.
That's nice to know. Yeah. So obviously now we're going to have to rethink how to do assignments. You guys can't go out at all to do assignments. So that's going to be an issue. We're going to have to do some readings or something like that. And we can leave all that for after returning back to college. Just do the
हाँ
class.
हाँ 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 ठीक है
So with the first years also I've started, and first years who've gone to the second years, I've started with AutoCAD, teaching them AutoCAD. They're okay, they're happy with it. Because it's going to be difficult when they get back. So how's the situation around your houses? All of you all safe and fine?
Yes.
Yes.
That's nice. Good. You're helping out at home also, I hope.
Yes.
Good. Good, Manthan. आ गए सब लोग?
67
Yes.
people are there.
How many are you? 80?
Yes.
Okay, we'll wait for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So कैसा लग रहा है ये सब ऑनलाइन बिजनेस?
New, it's new.
Yeah, it's new for us also. I don't know how we can't manage architecture like this.
Yes.
So that's tough. Have you all been through the course?
No.
No, not yet.
Okay, so we'll run through it.
Mamta, I think we should start. 70 people are there.
Okay, let's start.
Yeah.
You'll have to allow me to share my screen. Can you do that, Kajal?
Mamta, can you try sharing the screen? We've given you the permission.
Yeah, okay. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I just want to first quickly run through the course. Okay, what we're going to do in the 5th year. Now, this entire 5th year deals with the planning of the city and what we have been so-called plagued with right since prior independence. The thing that has been troubling us and pushing us to the brink is the question of housing. Okay, right from the start, we know that Bombay has been one of the prime focus of all economic activities in the city, right? Even prior to independence. And at that point of time, we saw such a lot of migration or exodus, either happening because of the war kind of situation, because we were at loggerheads at that point of time, also because of industrialization setting in, that we were facing this kind of exodus of people into the city. And the city, at every point of time, has never been prepared to look at this housing situation. So we've had this kind of huge gap between the demand and availability or supply of especially affordable housing in the city. The primary hurdles that we face is the question of land, because we are only that much, right? We're surrounded by the sea, we're cut off by that canal to the rest of the country, and that's all that we can grow. So we've always had this question. We also want to hold on to the natural ecology that the city provides us with. So we're dealing with these kind of hurdles without trying to hamper or damage that natural ecology in the city. So we've had this, like I said, gap between the demand and supply right from pre-independence times, and we've had to face the situation of an influx of a lot of people without being prepared for it. That is the reason why the city took steps to get into preparing a land use plan or preparing a development plan for the city. And that is what we're going to trace. We're going to see the trajectory of where the first planning steps began, but our focus is going to be from the point of view of making land available for providing affordable housing. So we'll see how the first development plan came up, how the second development plan came up, what were the boards that were put in place to be able to tackle this issue, and what were the steps that all these boards took to either repair some old housing stock in the city or how to create new housing stock in the city and how to create land for that housing stock in the city. That is going to be the primary focus of 5th year professional practice, because this is what your practice is going to be about. So you're going to have to be aware of all the policies that the city has been seeing through all these years, and all the planning tools that the city has adopted to be able to provide this and being able to bridge that gap between the demand and supply. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to see is that, as you can see in the next point, is the discussion on escalation in demand for affordable housing post-independence. We know that this demand existed even in pre-independence times, but we're going to focus more on post-independence. And like I mentioned, the various bodies that were formed and put in place to be able to tackle this situation. So our very first thing that we need to know is what are sort of the features or characteristics that go about with that land. What comes, what are the encumbrances that come with those land parcels? And one thing is the Easement Act. Okay. Now, what is easement? It is a kind of a right, but this right has been bestowed upon you because you have been availing of that right for a long continuous period. Okay. For example, if I have to be using someone's plot of land to reach my plot of land. And I have been doing this from right from the beginning, from whenever I procured that plot of land. It's because of that continuous process of me using my neighbor's land to reach my land, I am bestowed with that right of using that part of his land. So that's one example. So we're going to look at this Easement Act. So it's an act which actually allows you for this free use of the land. Okay. Then we're also going to look at the Land Acquisition Act. So we came to a certain point in time where we didn't have the land, or the land was not with the government to be able to carry out these affordable housing projects, or to be able to carry out any other projects that they deemed necessary for development of mankind. So there is a possibility that they thought that we need to set up like something like a BARC. And for that we need land, right? So that means the government then had the right to acquire a specific plot of land in order to provide for services for mankind, or for the people of that city. And that's how this act gives the government the right to be able to acquire that land. If I have to provide you with some kind of public purpose, I have been given that right that I can take that piece of land to be able to give you that service. Of course, I'm going to compensate you for it. So the act is actually called as a Land Acquisition and Compensation Act. Okay. Then we're going to see the politics of rent control and its implications. We spoke about this exodus of people coming into the city in large numbers, such a large number that we were unable to control it. But we had to provide them for place to stay. Now, when you know that the demand increases and your supply is not that much, what is the direct impact? The direct impact is economic. The prices are going to increase, correct? So landlords took it on them to increase these prices, the rental prices. And in order to stop them, because it's going to again be unaffordable for the people, right? If they continue increasing rents in an exponential manner. So in order to control that escalating rent, the government put in what is called as a Rent Control Act. This happened in 1940. The fact that they put a Rent Control Act in place, it was to favor the tenants very obviously, but it had a very adverse impact, which we're going to have to look at carefully. Very obviously, if the rents did not match the increasing prices or inflation that was taking place in the city, it was bound to cause a negative impact where the repairs and reconstruction was concerned. If I'm paying you 100 rupees rent for a 300 square feet place, even today, it's impossible for the landlord to be able to maintain that place, right? So apart from the fact that there is a covenant or a contract drawn up between the landlord and the person who is renting the place, there is this hurdle that the landlord is facing because he's unable to maintain his premises with the kind of rent that the lessee is paying, right? There is a contract which says that the person who's renting the place has to take care of certain kind of repairs. So there are different kinds of repairs that we have to look into. It will be something like there are structural repairs and there are tenantable repairs. So I'm looking at the tenantable repairs so that if there is, the paint is a little damaged, some hooks have come off, handle has come off, tiles have come off, and that I can replace. But when it comes to structural repairs, and we're looking at buildings that were constructed prior to 1940, which were mostly load-bearing with a lot of timber members. So we're looking at structural damage to those timber members, right? So if I'm unable to carry out those structural repairs, the building gets into what is called as a state of disrepair. And finally, it is called as waste because we're unable to actually do anything with that building. We're unable to repair it. So what is the policy that the state brought in recently to be able to tackle this situation? correct? So we're going to have to look into that. We're looking into the politics of rent controls. So what was the behind the scenes situation that was happening with this Rent Control Act? And what is it and how now the city or the bodies in the city are looking to take advantage of that fact? That entire lot of what we called as cessed buildings, you might have heard of this term. These cessed buildings are the buildings which came under the Rent Control Act, and they finally had to pay a cess. That's why that's a repair cess. That's a tax. So they had to pay a repair cess, which is again very minimal, like a 40 rupees, a 70 rupees, okay? And that added up to a fund which could help them repair their building. But now, because the situation has gone beyond control, this entire body of buildings, cessed buildings, which are around 16,000 in the city, have been put under the fold of MHADA. I'm sure you must have heard of MHADA, right? Because that has all gone under MHADA's fold. MHADA is now going to look at how to redevelop these cessed buildings in the city, okay? So that's another aspect which we are going to cover up. Now we are also going to look at the current scenario, okay? I agree there is standard rent, methods of ascertaining, this comes next term, standard rent, methods of calculating that standard rent. But we are going to have to look at all these factors as per current DCR. So we have to know this is something which we can't do anymore. We can't do a site study anymore. But we're going to have to maybe take examples of a couple of buildings around us or some examples which I have, which the college has carried out as a study. I'll show you that report. So we look at those case studies and understand this. What we have to understand where FSI is concerned is that the government is trying to create vertical land by granting very high FSI, okay? You understand that initially we had an FSI of 1 and 1.33. The city had 1, the suburbs had 1.33. As against that, with a whole lot of gamut of TDR, redevelopment FSI, incentive FSI, that FSI is now going up to 3.27 plus 1, and that FSI is actually reaching around 5, okay? And if you see that impact of that kind of 5 FSI on the city, we are going to be doomed completely because the quality of life or the livability in the city is going to deteriorate with that kind of FSI, right? So this is an understanding which we have to do. Like I said, we're not doing any site study anymore, no case studies anymore. Whatever is available with us, we will use it. And for this term, you're only going to have to do some readings as your assignments because we really can't do anything else with it. Okay? Have you understood any questions on the course? Anything else that you want on the course? There were a couple of requests last time that they wanted to understand how redevelopment is carried out and how those calculations take place, like a feasibility study or whatever. And that is something which I can do with you guys. That's not an issue. But if you have any specific requests and any questions with this, then I can work on the course and sort of tweak it, and then we can accommodate that in our curriculum. So just let me know. Think about it till next week and let me know. As of now, any questions?
I have a question. So this acts and all will also cover the municipal acts for grade 1 heritage buildings, like the markets and all in the city.
Okay. So now when I do dilapidations, it is just an overall. The whole thing is just an overview. But if you want to look at grade-wise heritage structures, we can organize a special lecture either by a master student or we can get Jimmy to come in and take that class for you because they are doing it. In fact, the presentation that we did for dilapidated structures was by the master student. They came and took the class, okay, because they're doing conservation. So they know there are some basic 6 rules of conservation. We know about heritage lists. I know about the heritage list. We know about the dilapidated buildings list that's available online, okay? But the technicalities of it, if you want to get into, then we will call one of them in to do that class, okay? Maybe when we begin college. So yes, we can tackle that. That's not an issue. Anything else?
Monica, are industrial buildings also included in this?
The CEST buildings are all basically residential because those were the buildings that were available at that point of time for the tradespeople who were coming in. We had a lot of trade happening with Gujarat. So if you see the Kalba Devi CEST buildings, there are you can very easily distinguish different kinds of CEST buildings. Okay, if you look at the Kalba Devi CEST buildings, they're still in a really good condition today because they had the people coming from Gujarat looking after trade stay in those places. Okay, so they were able to maintain it. Even today, they're pitching in their own money and maintaining and repairing those buildings. Okay, so if I have an example of the Kalba Devi, we can study that. Then there are buildings in Dadar, if you know. In Dadar, the CEST buildings are mostly about the people working in the mills. That housing was created for the people working in the mills. And very obviously, that's a different category of buildings, right? And their condition is really very deplorable. They're still staying in those buildings. There's still a lot of leakage. There's a lot of damage to the structural members. But now MADA is looking into it. But this thing you can see very clearly, but it's all residential. There's no industrial in the CEST building.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else before we go on to the next slot so we can begin with class? Because I think there's only 5 minutes remaining to this session. Anything specific which you think you want? Like she mentioned grade structures. So anything specific that you want? How many of you are looking at theses dealing with conservation?
I'm doing.
Okay. That's nice because like I said, that's the current focus in the city as well.
Yeah.
Looking at these buildings. So just to wrap up, looking at the situation in the city, we're joining back, right, after the session again?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So just to wrap up this, what is the phenomena that has sort of got created in the city? There is a technical term which we call as, in finance, we call it as financialization of housing. What is this phenomena, right? Because of this demand that has been created and the government not actually being able to carry out these projects, the government has taken help from private developers, as you're very well aware of, right? So the developers took on in the city to redevelop these buildings. But in that process, what resulted was housing that was created mostly in the premium segment, right? Even MADA says it has to create HIG, it has to create MIG, it has to create LIG, and it has to create EWS. And the LIG and EWS component has to be higher than the HIG and the MIG component. That's the higher income group, middle income group. But since the developers were involved and they were involved at creating massive amounts of profit, only housing in the premium segment got delivered, right? And we're still left with that backlog in the lower income group and the economically weaker section group, right? And this created, of course, as we very well know, escalation of real estate in the city, escalation of apartment prices in the city. And this is what we term as financialization of housing. Along with this, now this has all happened because what another term that we keep using is all this has come out of the fact of neoliberalism, because the government had to give up, right? Now what the term that we use, if you need to read David Harvey's book, I'll give you the names of the book, David Harvey, and you need to read Henry Lefebvre, The Urban Revolution. You need to read these two books to understand all this, right? So we moved from a dirigistic is what we call it. That means a completely state-owned, okay, completely strongly government-owned, to neoliberal, where we had to bring in privatization. We had to bring in private players to be able to help us out of the situation. There was no way that the government could manage it on its own. So we opened up our markets to everybody. Now this happened long back. This happened in 91 itself. Okay. So we opened up to them. We got in these developers, and now there is this kind of nexus between the politicians, the developers, the policymakers, and everyone has taken that situation to their advantage, and that is again termed as cronyism. Though crony means just friendship, okay? But this is that tight kind of friendship that got created and resulted in financialization of housing. So again, the affordable sector got completely neglected in this process. Now we have another body which is called as RERA. You've heard of it, Real Estate Regulatory Authority, which is trying to pull back. So from dirigistic, we've gone to neoliberal. From neoliberal, I call it, we are going back to neo-dirigistic because we're going back to government-owned and government-controlled policy. So RERA is making sure that the builders are now not holding the consumers at ransom. They deliver the project on time. They don't mess around with the funds that they have received for a specific project. Okay, so this is one very interesting feature which we can look at the end of the term, somewhere at the end of the term, and we can have a debate. So our class assignments also can be about debating, can be about reading. We're not going to do any study buddy. Okay. Did you understand that? Did you get that concept of financialization?